Oh, he is my song, and let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. Sing it again. And let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. And let the King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. 'Cause you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good.
Come on, sing that again.
Oh,
Sing you are good.
you are good, you're good.
I feel like we need to be reminded how good he is. He's not mad at you this morning.
You're good.
He doesn't hold grudges. He's a good God. He's a good God. Sing it out.
Good. You're good, Lord. Oh, and you are good. You're good. Oh, and let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he's my song. And let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he's my song. And let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. And let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. 'Cause you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh,
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. Yeah. You're never gonna let me down. Yeah, Jesus. You're never gonna let me down. Come on. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're never gonna let 'cause you are good. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna. Come on, just begin to language your faith on your own. Tell him how much you believe he's gonna pull through for you. Remember back on all those times where he has pulled through for you, all those signposts along the way of his faithfulness in your life. If he's done it then, he'll do it now. If he did it then, he'll do it now. If he did it then, he'll do it now. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. But you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. Yeah. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna. Come on, one last time. Let's sing You Are Good. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Whoa, you are good. You're good. Whoa, you are good. You're good. Whoa, you are good. You're good. Whoa.
Yeah, whenever I sing something like that, like He's good, I realize that only comes into an experience in our life when everything around us feels kind of not so good. Like we can only learn to apply that in not so good situations. In situations that don't make sense. How many have something right now in their life that doesn't make sense? But you're approaching it, doesn't make sense. So what do you do with that? Do you keep moving forward, or do you let what doesn't make sense rob you of the opportunity that God is giving you to trust in His goodness? I know for me, sometimes I look at a situation, it doesn't make sense, and it's easy to shy away from what doesn't make sense and go to what makes sense. But in faith, what doesn't make sense to us often is what makes sense to God. It makes sense to approach things that don't make sense and put faith on that. That's what makes sense. I was just in Vancouver, and I was ministering in Vancouver this week, and it was on a Wednesday night. It was in like an underground church setting and by invitation only, and there was this bunch of people there at a coffee shop, real awesome coffee shop. It's rented out, and before I went into the meeting, I was praying, God, give me some words for people to encourage people, and I kept hearing this one word, blacksmith. Didn't make sense. That's all I got. It wasn't like, Sean, there is a blacksmith in the room. It was just blacksmith. It didn't make sense to me. And I remember, when I was sharing it, and it was a smaller group setting, and I shared it, I said, this makes sense to somebody. And this woman put up her hand and said, my uncle's name is Smith. And it's funny because she was black. And it was a moment, I'm like, this is how God spoke. It was like, okay, you're black. Let's just be honest, you're black. Your uncle's name is Smith. This word is for you. But you see, if I didn't approach it, if I didn't step out to what doesn't make sense, she would have missed an opportunity to receive encouragement. And I would have missed the opportunity to give the encouragement. And sometimes what doesn't make sense is actually the thing that most makes sense to God. And so God, I pray that in this season, during this faith series, that we as a culture would continue to uncover faith in every season, in every scenario, in every circumstance, that what doesn't make sense would begin to make sense in Jesus' name. Do you agree? I'm just so thankful for all the people that we've been able to invest in over the years, and that have been a part of this house, the team, throughout all the interesting, fun transitions of church that we've had over the last few years. And there's this one individual who came through our doors not too long ago, and who's been a huge asset, huge value, incredible example of consistency, persistence, perseverance, loyalty, and just heart for the house. She's walked in it day to day, represented it. She's put her all into it all the time. She's shown that she, in my opinion, she's earned enough, in a sense, respect enough to be able to speak into your lives. Because God has trusted her, God's put on her something so special. And we're so thankful because we have the opportunity as a house to send her off in this next season into her new journey as she gets married, as she ties the knot. She's, for at least a year, she's moving to the East Coast. She's gonna gorge on lobster and marriage, and she's gonna get real fruitful. And sorry, I just have to drop that. But anyways, but I'm so thankful, and I want to welcome to the stage Tanya Oakes, who's going to be sharing the word with you guys this morning. She is the leader of our VIP services, and so I want you to open up your heart, welcome her, and just let her just rock your world a little bit this morning. Awesome. You guys can take a seat.
Well, thank you. Wow. Thank you so much for those kind words. I was tearing up a little bit. I love this house. I love all that I have received from this house. So I was actually looking at my calendar, and it was actually exactly a year ago to the date. Now, this wasn't planned, but exactly a year ago to the date that I was up here and shared for the first time my journey and my story about my fight for love. And so little did I know that in a year, I would be standing before you engaged with a man who has fought for my love. So for those of you who maybe don't know the story, full circle. So for those of you who maybe don't know the story of Aaron and I, so I have known Aaron for 13 years, and we met on a ministry trip. And so from the moment he met me, he was smitten. He was interested in me, and but I was not interested in him. He went immediately to the friend zone with me, and I told him several times, Aaron, we will always just be friends, nothing more. I'm very straightforward that way. So now I'm eating my words though, but this is the conversation that we had in him asking me out for our first date. So the conversation went something like this: Aaron, you're the perfect guy, but I'm just not interested. So he responded and he said, okay, you should go on a date with me. And I was a little confused at that response. I was like, wait, did you just hear what I said? All right, okay, well, okay, I'll go on a date with you, but just so that you know, I don't think there's anything there. So it turns out there was something there. There were feelings, and I'm so grateful for a man that fought for my love, that pursued my heart, and that didn't give up. So I'm really excited about the story that God has written with us and just the redemption that he has done through our story. So God writes the best stories, doesn't he? The best stories, and he will turn situations around that are terrible, and he'll make them good. That's like his specialty. He writes the best stories, and in the Bible, you can see that throughout the Bible, these wonderful stories where God turns things around. And one of my favorite of those stories being in the book of Ruth. So Pastor Sean has been taking us on a journey of faith, right? The best F word, this faith series for the last few weeks. And so the book of Ruth has many stories of faith and faithfulness. It takes faith sometimes to be faithful, right? It takes faith to be faithful, but there's also a fullness in faith, in being faithful. There is a benefit to being faithful. So one of the verses in Matthew, so Jesus is telling a parable, and one of the verses actually kind of parallels this statement of there is a benefit to being faithful. In Matthew 25:21, it's the end of a parable that Jesus is speaking of, and it says, his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. So there's actually a verse in Ruth that really parallels this statement. So I'm just going to take a look. So it's Ruth 2:11, and this is in speaking about Ruth. It says, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and your mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." So the message of my title today is Getting the Full Out of Faithful. Faith benefits. So we're gonna take a look at the story of Ruth. She has a few lessons to teach us on being faithful. In her life, it demonstrates the fullness of being faithful. So the book of Ruth it's only 4 chapters. I definitely recommend checking it out, delving into it. It's a great story, great little book. But we're just gonna take a quick little overview of her story and really glean from the lessons of faithfulness that we can take from her life. So the story starts off with a lady named Naomi. And she's from Israel, and she's living in a foreign land. So she's living in a foreign land with her husband and her 2 sons. And her 2 sons end up getting married to a couple of local women in the foreign land. So a couple years pass, and unfortunately, Naomi loses her husband. And then a few more years pass, and she loses her 2 sons. So she decides she's going to head back to Israel. And she turns to her daughter-in-laws, and of course, this is just a paraphrase, but she turns to her daughter-in-laws and says, "Listen, I'm heading back to Israel. You stay here with what you're familiar with your family here, and I'm going to go on my way." And so her daughter-in-laws, they don't want to leave her side. They refuse. They want to be by her side. So she insists. She says, "No, listen. So back in that day, when you were a widow, it was basically a sentence to poverty. There's not good circumstances coming up for you if you are a widow. So she insists that they stay in the land because there's a better chance of them getting remarried, and that's just a better situation for them. She insists, listen, stay with your family. Don't just cut your ties. Let's move on. I'm okay. I'll be okay." So one of the daughter-in-laws does just that. She goes on her way. But the other daughter-in-law, she's a little stubborn. She refuses to leave Naomi's side. That's Ruth. So Ruth decides, no, listen, again, paraphrasing, "I'm with you no matter what comes our way. I'm with you through thick and thin, and your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. This God of Israel will be my God." And so she follows her, she clings to her, and they go on their way to Israel. So the first lesson that we can learn from Naomi is this: be faithful in your relationships. So be faithful in your relationships. When you focus in being faithful and serving the relationships that are before you, you can't help but glean from the benefits. You can't help but glean from them, to learn from them as you serve them. And God has put people in our lives, whether it's our boss, or maybe it's a leader in our life. Maybe it's your Connect group leader, or maybe it's your pastor, or maybe it's somebody that you really you really admire and you want to become, like, have the things that they have. You really admire what they have become. So those people in your life, they may be leaders in your life that you're there to glean from and really learn from. And I'm convinced that one of the best ways to learn from them and to glean from them is to actually serve them. So Jesus said in Matthew 20:26, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." So he kind of alludes to that fact. If you want to be a leader, if you want to learn all that there is from this leader, try serving them. So a few years ago, in my early 20s, so I'm 30 now, in my early 20s, I actually interned at a church in Stratford, Ontario. So I interned for a couple of years, and it was about halfway through the internship, they sat me down, and they said, how's it going? How's the internship going? And in my early 20-year-old mind, I was a little self-focused, and I said to them that I wasn't being mentored the way that I felt like I needed to be mentored. And I literally, these were my words. I said, I want a relationship like Ruth and Naomi, or I want a relationship like Elijah and Elisha. And so a few years ago, just a couple of years ago, while I was here in Ottawa, I actually was reading over the story of Ruth, and that memory came to mind, that scenario came to mind. And I thought, oh my, I don't think I realized what I was asking for and what I was stating and looking for a relationship like Ruth and Naomi. Because if you look at that relationship, Ruth sacrificed everything to serve Naomi. She gave up all that she knew to serve her. And even in Elijah and Elisha gave up his job, his family, to follow after Elijah to learn. And of course, both of them did, yes, benefit from those relationships, but they had to sacrifice a lot in that relationship. And so looking back at that, and even like looking back at that scenario, I thought, I had no idea how much I was benefiting from just serving those relationships, how rich of the relationships were around me, how much faith there were and the leaders that were around me, how much I grew in that season, how much opportunity I got. It grieved my heart that I couldn't see it at the time. I couldn't see how much I was benefiting. I got the opportunity to grow in the gifts that God had given me. I got the opportunity to travel internationally. And in my young 20-year-old mind, I couldn't recognize how much of a benefit that was in serving this ministry. And, I got to see God move in miraculous ways. And I look back at that season as such a rich season. And I didn't recognize it because it didn't look like what I thought it would. So maybe, you have mentors in your life or leaders in your life, and it isn't exactly who you thought it would be, or if maybe it doesn't look like what you thought. It's a little bit more sacrificial than what you thought it would be. But don't miss it. God has amazing things. He's going to answer prayers of relationships that are directly in front of you in ways that you can't even fathom. You don't even have a context for it. So when I moved here to Ottawa, it was about 3 years ago, and I had this thought in mind that I really wanted to be mentored. I wanted to be mentored in faith. I wanted to learn what it was to have real faith where it applied in business, real faith where it applied in family, real faith where it applied in my community. And I wanted to learn to have a faith that was so impacting that it couldn't help but affect and influence the world around me. So I was expecting that coming here to Ottawa. And I was wondering, okay, what is this going to look like? And I thought, okay, I'm moving to Ottawa. It's a government city. Maybe I'll get involved in politics. Who knows? But a couple of months in, I decided, no, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not gonna get into that realm. But these different opportunities came up, and I thought, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to invest in. But it just didn't seem right. It wasn't quite what I had in mind. And so I kept on being redirected to serve in the relationships that were directly in front of me here at Kingdom Culture. So I had been looking all around, but every single time would be redirected back to my relationships and serving here at the church, serving here at Kingdom Culture. And I ended up getting more than I could have bargained, more than I could have imagined. I got to build relationships with amazing entrepreneurs. I got the opportunity to be inspired by people of incredible faith. I got the opportunity to these people have such incredible testimonies and just be encouraged in my faith. And I got the amazing opportunity to learn from our amazing pastors. By serving in this ministry and serving in the relationships here, I got to learn what it is to have big faith, to have big expectations, to be moved outside of my comfort zone, to be moved outside of the limits that I had set for myself, and the limits that I had even maybe set for God as well. I got the opportunity to learn what it was to take big risks and to expect God to move, to expect God to change the community around us. That's what I got from serving in this ministry. It was way more. Like, I had this reference of what I thought I would gain by moving here to Ottawa, and God blew my expectations life and glean and learn the most that you have from these relationships. And one of the best ways to do that is to just serve them, spend time in their presence, serve them. Yeah. So going back to the story of our friend Ruth, So as you recall, so Ruth and Naomi are back in Israel. And so back in that day, so Ruth goes out into the fields to get some food for her and her mother-in-law. So back in that day, God had established a law where harvesters in the field, laborers in the field, were to leave a little bit of the harvest behind so that there was enough for the poor. So that law had been established. So this is why Ruth went to the fields to glean what she could from the fields. And the laborers actually took notice of her. They noticed how diligent she was. And she would be there from early morning to late at night with very little break. And they started to take notice. And not only did she get noticed by the laborers, also the owner of the field, Boaz, noticed her as well. There was talk in the community about this young girl who had left all that she knew just to serve her mother-in-law. Her faithfulness was being talked about in the community. And so she got noticed by Boaz, the owner of the field. And so he looked at her favorably, and he offered her, food and water. He told his laborers to leave a little bit extra in the field for her. He told them as well to keep an eye out on her, to protect her as well. She found favor in his eyes. So the second lesson that we can learn from our friend Ruth is be faithful in your work. Be faithful in your work. In Proverbs 22:29, it says, do you see a man, or a woman, do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Now, I owe this verse as a promise. He will not stand before kings. And the way that I interpret that as is, we're not going to stand before kings. We are going to stand before kings. Kings being influential people. Influential people that are maybe even key to what's next in your season. God will put you before influential people. You will not stand before obscure men. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again in my life, that God has set me before the right people and the right timing. He sets you before influential people. So this has happened for me in the last 3 jobs that I've gotten. So a few years ago, when I had moved back to Moncton in my early 20s, I was really hoping to stay in the hotel industry. And so I was applying in jobs, and I wasn't getting any jobs. There was nothing that was coming through. I was getting really discouraged, and I thought maybe I'll have to, settle for something less. Then all of a sudden, I get a call out of nowhere for this hotel that I hadn't dropped my resume off. And they were calling me in for an interview, and I thought, okay, I'll go in for the interview. I had no idea how they got my contact information, but I went in. It turns out that my boss from the previous city, she had connections in Moncton, and she reached out and forwarded my resume along to her contacts and spoke highly of me. And so this hotel ended up seeing me favorably, hiring me, and in that hotel, in 4 years, I ended up getting a promotion 4 times. Because of one person that saw me favorably. And to me, I'm like, God, that is your favor. That is you setting me before kings, setting me before influential people. And so in my desire to come back to Ottawa, or to come to Ottawa, I really, I knew the season of when I wanted to be in Ottawa. And I had no idea how it was going to happen, though, because I had really no connections here in the city. But I was confident that God would open up the door. So I was actually sent here on business to attend a trade show. So I was at the trade show, and I just happened to be actually going to grab a glass of water. And I started talking to this guy who, he was a director of sales, which normally doesn't happen. Usually it's a sales manager that's there. It was a director of sales, and he just happened to work at this hotel that was looking to fill a position. So I asked him if I could submit my resume, and I ended up getting the job. So I got the job, and afterwards he told me if he wouldn't have met me at that point, he probably would have overlooked my resume. It was that first impression that really sold him on me. And the thing about being faithful, like you can be faithful in your work, yes, to things that you know are important. But the thing about being faithful in every single area of your life, every single task that you're given is important. So occupying every area of your life and being faithful in everything is that you never know who you're going to be talking to. You never know who is going to be looking, right? That person that you're talking to, that person that I was speaking to, was my future boss. and I had no idea. I could have been speaking negatively about the trade show. I could have been bad-mouthing a couple of the other vendors. I had no idea that that was my future boss. So, the little things that we do, like maybe this morning, maybe you open the door for somebody. Hey, maybe that person is going to be your future wife. You never know. Maybe, you never know, right? You got to watch out for this. Maybe the person that you poured coffee for is going to be like a reference for you for your job, or maybe it's your future boss. But then the opposite side of things, maybe you're not being faithful in an area. Maybe the person that you cut off today is your future mother-in-law. You never know, right? It's true. You want to watch out for that. You want to be faithful in all areas because you never know. You never know. You got to watch out. You got to be faithful, occupying every area of your life and seeing the value in everything that you're given. And so, in moving here to Ottawa, so just a side note to the people that are single here. So when I moved here, being single, I recognized there is a value in being single. You have so much time on your hands. Because let's face it, no significant other is wanting your time, not yet. And maybe you don't have kids. I've seen that kids take up a lot of time. So when you're single, you have the gift of time. And so this is the time to be faithful with your time. Now is the time to establish your health routine, to get into eating healthy and a workout routine, even your spiritual health, spending time with God and getting to know who He is and getting to know who you are in Him. And it's also an amazing opportunity to invest in things that you're interested in, right? And that you see value in. And so I really value relationship and people. And so I saw, here at Kingdom Culture, what better way to invest my time than to just really and spend the time and spend my effort here and serve in this ministry. So I'm had a short commute at time. I just saw that God really set me up to really give my time and invest. It's an opportunity, and it was my opportunity to be faithful with this short time that I had. So every task that I was given, I've had various roles in this ministry, everything from greeting people at the door to helping people find their seats to cleaning the toilets. Yeah. I seen some interesting things in the Carlton men's bathroom, but and also I've had the opportunity to give announcements. Those 4 minutes of announcements, and let me tell you, there has been times where I've spent up to 2 hours practicing for 4 minutes because I am determined. I'm determined to do excellent in everything that I'm given, to value, because those 4 minutes are valuable to you guys. Those 4 minutes are valuable to this ministry, and those 4 minutes are valuable to God. And so I am determined to give 100% of myself to do everything that I have in excellence, every task that I'm given in excellence. And you never know, right? You never know who you're greeting, who you're showing, a seat for, who you're speaking in front of. And I shared with you guys a few weeks ago that I got this career opportunity, right? Really excited about this in this new job. Well, it turns out that my future boss actually goes to this church. So it actually mattered every single time I greeted him. It really mattered every single time I would help him find a seat. It mattered every single time I represented, right? You never know who is going to be watching, and God is faithful. When we're faithful, God is faithful to set you before kings, to set you before influential people. Look for it and expect it. That's what He's good at. Yeah, that's right. I'm still rooted here in Ottawa because of the job. So pretty cool the way that God works everything out. So back to the story. Okay, so back to the story. We recall that Boaz took notice of Ruth, right? All right. So some of you may have already guessed this turns into a love story. Aww. So he marries Ruth, and long story short, he marries Ruth, and they end up having a family. And Ruth ends up being the great-grandmother of King David. David, one of the greatest kings of Israel. So at the beginning of her life, things didn't look so great. Things were quite bleak in her life, right? She had the opportunity to turn away, to actually turn away from God, this God of Israel. And Naomi, okay, so if Ruth were looking at Naomi's life, it would be easy to say, okay, if you're to take a snapshot of Naomi's life, you could probably come to the conclusion that serving the God of Israel maybe isn't the greatest thing. Like, good things don't seem to happen. Because even Naomi herself, so Naomi actually means pleasant, but Naomi herself said, stop calling me Naomi. I'm not pleasant. Call me Mara, because it means bitter. I am bitter, and God has dealt with me bitterly. She said this. So Ruth, seeing this, well, that still didn't deter her. She was still determined to be faithful, even though she didn't see it, even though the circumstances weren't the greatest. She was determined to be faithful. And I would even have to say that in that moment, it must have taken great faith to be faithful in that moment, right? So the third lesson that we can learn from Ruth is be faithful to your call. So by call, I mean your full potential. Because let's face it, God has a full potential for us, right? He wants us to become the best and most powerful us. And so, we have this full potential that God is working towards, that God is helping us move towards. And, maybe you're in this room and maybe you don't necessarily believe in God, but there is still that full potential of who you want to become, right? There's still this ideal person that you want to become. But it doesn't always come easy. Sometimes you're faced with circumstances that kind of contradict what you want to become. And it's actually really difficult to be faithful in that moment. It's difficult, but you need faith almost to move through those circumstances to become the full person of the full potential of what God has for you. So it takes faith and it takes faithfulness. And one of the most faithful people that I know in my life that has demonstrated faithfulness and perseverance is actually my future husband. So Aaron, he has known that he's wanted to serve his country for years. And so it was about 12 years ago when he applied to be an RCMP officer. And so he applied, long story short, got into the program and was pulled out, but then applied again, and he got in, and it's actually a really rigorous process just to get in. So he finally got in, and only a few weeks before he was done the training, he fell down the stairs and blew out his knee. So he was pulled from the program, and he wasn't able to finish it. He wasn't able to finish the program. And so in, a few surgeries later, some recovery, every single time he reapplied, he would fail because of the physical, because his knee never fully recovered. And so he still kept on going. He still kept on reapplying. He was determined to get in. There were people who discouraged him and told him, listen, maybe you should just choose another career path. But he was determined. He continued to reapply. And then finally, 10 years into the journey, 10 years in, his physiotherapist said, oh yeah, and by the way, so he never gave up hope. I still remember to this day, we'd be in groups and he would say, guys, can you pray for me that God would heal my knee? He never gave up hope that God would heal his knee so that he could serve his country in the way that he felt called. And so never gave up hope, never gave up faith, kept on persevering. So 10 years in, his physiotherapist says, why don't you try to switch up your exercise routine? There's this thing, CrossFit, maybe some of you have heard of it. So he started doing that exercise routine, and in a year had recovered. His knee he was able to operate in a way that he hadn't before. He reapplied, and he got accepted. He applied actually to CBSA, and he applied to become an RCMP officer. He got accepted into both programs, and then was accepted he actually ended up going into CBSA, which I'm very thankful for because, the training for RCMP is all the way out in Winnipeg, and CBSA is just conveniently a few hours from here in Ottawa. So that was why I started dating him. So I'm really glad that he chose CBSA. But isn't it funny how God works things out and how God has this plan, and sometimes it doesn't look like things are going well, and you have to kind of persevere and push through, and but in the end, it ends up turning out better than what you could have expected. But if we go back to Ruth even, okay, let's take our example of Ruth. So she went through difficult times. She ended up being the great-grandmother of David. Not only that, but she actually was in the lineage of Jesus. And she had a book written about her. And thousands of years later, we're still talking about this woman and her faithfulness. I bet you she could not have even fathomed that this would be what turned out by her being faithful in her relationships, faithful in the task that was before her, and faithful to the call that God had given her. She probably had no idea. It's like, we have this small frame of mind, this small kind of, we only see the here and now. Maybe we have a lake in mind, but God has an ocean. Like, you never know. Like, can you imagine Ruth not having even a grid for us, checking out her story on her little iPhones? Like, she had no grid for that, right? Some of the most difficult situations in our faith and our faith walk is when, you're faithful in an area, but you're seeing a complete contradiction, and you're facing situations that are difficult and are contradicting and making it difficult to be faithful. Those are, I know, and even in my faith walk, it has been some of the most bitter moments of like, God, where are you? Like, I thought I was faithful in this area. Why is this happening? But looking back, some of those bitter moments have turned into the most sweet moments. So it was a year ago, like I said, where I shared my story about being 23 and kind of having my life fall apart. I still remember this day. So I was 23, I was married, and I found out that my husband had cheated on me. So I still remember that day. I still remember walking. I was just walking and I ended up in this field. So I ended up in this field, and I remember it was June, and I remember looking out into the field, and you could see these little plants coming out. And in this moment where I was like, God, like my life is falling apart. God, where are you? It feels like you have abandoned me. But in this moment, I felt like this is a moment where, I need to actually just say that God is faithful. I need to actually sing out that God is faithful in this moment. And so in that moment, I don't remember the song, but I remember that moment. And I still feel like, at the end of this life, when me and God are kind of looking over my life, I still feel like we're gonna look back at that moment in that field, and we're gonna agree that that was probably one of the sweetest moments of my life. Because in that situation where it's like I didn't feel it, I didn't see it, and it felt like circumstances were saying that God had left, I didn't know what was gonna happen to my life in the following weeks. I didn't know what was gonna become of what I had invested in this marriage. But yet, still, I decided that my words, that my being would speak out that God is faithful, that God had not left me, that even though it didn't make sense, that God is faithful. Because, He sees the before, the during, He sees the after, but sometimes in that moment, we only see the situation, and it's so hard to believe that some of the hardest moments in our faith. So I want to pray for some of you that maybe are facing some of those bitter situations. Maybe you've been faithful in a specific area, and like what I'm saying today is actually kind of making you angry, because you're like, Tanya, I have been faithful in this area, and I still haven't seen the breakthrough. Like maybe you've been faithful in your finances, and yet still you're struggling in your finances, and having a hard time making ends meet. You've been faithful. You're like, God, I have been faithful in this area. Maybe you've been faithful at work. Maybe you've been faithful of investing years at work, and yet still you haven't seen that promotion, or maybe worse, you've been fired. Or maybe you've been faithful in your relationships. You have been faithful in just being faithful with your single years, and yet still you haven't seen that significant other come into your life, and you're waiting. You're like, God, I've been faithful. Or maybe, you've been faithful in relationship, and you've been faithful in family, and you still don't have a family of your own. And you've called out to God, you've been faithful for years, and you still haven't seen the breakthrough. I want to pray for you. And for those of you who maybe you don't feel this way, you're not facing a bitter situation, you've moved on, maybe in the past you've faced bitter situations, but you're in the clear, somebody. Maybe you know a friend. Because let me tell you, I know when I see my friends go through difficult times, sometimes that's shaking on my faith. Because I'm like, God, like, they have been through so much already, and they have been faithful in this area. Why? This doesn't make any sense. I want you right now for that family member or for that friend, I want you to pray on their behalf. So let's stand up. We're gonna pray. We're gonna agree. If you're facing that bitter situation, I feel like, God is gonna move something. Maybe the circumstances might not change right away, but God is gonna give you the sweetness in the bitter. God is gonna give you hope in a hopeless situation. So God, right now, Lord, for those who are facing those bitter situations, God, I pray right now that they would be strengthened at their core, God. God, it says in your word that a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries out the bones. So God, right now, we just speak right now strength to their spirits in Jesus' name. God, right now I pray that you would infuse them with hope. You would strengthen their faith. And right now we speak to those bones that have been dried out because of that crushed spirit. And we say, live in Jesus' name. Right now, God, I pray that you would breathe in hope in those dead areas of their hearts where maybe dreams have gone to die. And God, it's been so painful in this season to even have hope, to even believe that those dreams can come true. God, I pray right now, Father, you would remind them, you would give them a hope to believe that those dreams are possible, to keep on holding on, to keep on having faith. Strengthen their core, God. Strengthen their faith, Lord. I pray, Father, for them to be infused with hope. Let joy come, God. I pray, Lord, the joy is good medicine, and it is our strength, God. You are our strength in weak moments. And God, right now, I pray in this moment that a song would rise up from their hearts that says that you are good, that you have been faithful, that you are faithful, and that you will continue to be faithful all the days of our lives, and you will give us a story worth telling, God. Thank you. Raise up our faith, God. And God, I pray that you would put people in their lives, God, that would strengthen their faith, not tear it down, God. Sing that out.
You're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. Yeah. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. Yeah. You're never gonna let me down.
You're singing to that dead area of your life. You're speaking it out, even though you don't see it, even though you don't feel it. Maybe you're singing on behalf of a friend.
You're never gonna let me down.
Despite the circumstances,
You're never gonna let me down.
God, everything in us sings this.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna 'cause you are good, 'cause you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh,
You are good. You're good. Yes, God, thank you, Father, for what you have done today, God. We expect you to move, even if the circumstances don't change, God. We know, Father, that we will look back and this moment will be so sweet, God, in the midst of bitterness. Lord, we look for your faithfulness. Even if it doesn't look like what we expected it, give us eyes to see how you're moving on our behalf, God. And if you're here and this is the first time that you're encountering God, maybe, you don't have a relationship with Jesus yet. And maybe you don't know where you would go if you were to die today. We just want to agree in prayer today, to let God in. You're just saying yes to him in your life. This is a perfect opportunity to see God move on your behalf. We can see, difficult situations come up no matter what. But when you have God on your side, when you let God in, in those hopeless situations, you still have hope. You don't feel hopeless. And he moves on your behalf. He gives you strength and he shows you and he tells you what you were made for, your purpose. You're loved. You are loved. So right now we're just going to take a moment to pray. If you haven't received God, we're just going to pray all together. So if you want to repeat after me, Jesus, we believe that you are God.
Jesus, we believe that you are God.
We believe that you came on this earth.
We believe you came on this earth.
And you died and rose again for life in us.
You died and rose again for life in us.
And today we say yes to you.
Today we say yes to you.
In Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name.
It says, when you profess with your mouth, it's an outward expression of what's happening in your heart, and you're saved by a declaration of your faith. And if you said that for the first time today, we'd love to connect with you. We'd love to pray for you. We'd love for you to go back to the white table after the service. We have a black box that'll help you in your journey, in your faith journey. And so stop by the white kiosk. Don't be shy, and grab one of those black boxes. We'd love as well if you have a moment to pray with you as well. Connect with us somehow, even if it's just filling out a home card. If you're shy, fill out a home card, pass it to us. We want to stay connected to you. We want to help you in your faith journey. It's the best decision that you'll make in your life. So we're going to continue on, and you're more than welcome to go out, enjoy this warm, hot weather. We are back here at Carleton University next week. Remember, we're going to be entering from that door. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, guys. God bless.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh,